Hey, you want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. All in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take your conversations with fans to the next level, Q&A and polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another week of Ranching Reboot. This episode sponsored by our generous patrons over on patreon.com/Red Hills Rancher. Go and check that out. Next week, one of them could be you. This week, we're back in the Eastus Media studio, and with me today, I have my friend Sean Faulkner from Cornerstone Cattle Company, among other things, and we're going to sit down here today and let Sean tell his story. So, Sean, thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so Sean came down this morning, met me down at the ranch, and we got to tour around a little bit, went out and looked at the cows, and he got to see my cows, made sure we had a good count on the calves, threw him a bale, and got to go see a few other things. It wasn't like the longest tour in the world, but you did get to see a little bit of it.
Well, when you have that many acres, it's hard to see the entirety, but we got to see a bunch of really nice Corriente cows. Not crazy.
Well, some of them can be a little bit wild, I guess. I don't know. They'll stick their head in there and try to lick you to death and get cake. But So tell our listeners where you're at, Sean.
I am from Hutchinson, Kansas, which is just from where we sit right now, about an hour northeast, more east than north. But yeah, just Hutchinson, Kansas.
Okay. So what's your operation look like up there?
So we have a couple of different enterprises, but the main one we focus on is cows. We run a small herd of Black Angus cows, and have for some time now. So we also run pigs and chickens, eggs, layers, and fryers. I think the majority of the information or the whatever you want to call social media platforms or anything like that would know more about the cows than anything else.
Okay. So you've got pigs and chickens. Are they following the cows? How's that working in your rotation schedule? I guess the first question that comes to mind.
So, the pigs do not. We bought the place that my wife and I live. We bought in just a few months after we got married. So I've been there just short of 13 years.
Okay.
And the pasture was never really taken care of the way it needed to. And in all honesty, for the first couple of years, we didn't take care of the pasture the way we needed to. And so I was kind of reluctant actually to bring on the pigs. If you've ever had any experience with pigs.
I do not.
I have a love-hate relationship with them. They taste phenomenal, and they do really great things for the pasture. But they're not like cows. They don't herd very well. If they get out,
if they get out, they're just gone.
They're just gone. They're just gone. In fact, they got out of the pasture the other day, and me and two of my boys were on our way home from work and school, and they were almost a quarter mile down the road that we had to walk them. And if you've ever tried to walk pigs anywhere one direction, it is flat difficult. But so we've really stuck with the pigs on our place, regenerating and they do a really great job of rooting up that seed bed, and allowing. And so we'll have some chickens that will follow the pigs. And then we'll have some chickens that'll follow the cows. But we don't usually start running fryers until May. We did it a couple of years at the end of February, beginning of March. It's just too cold.
A little hard to keep little birds alive in January, February, March.
It's just too difficult. And so we have the ability to work on that, and we have the ability to say, I don't want my chickens yet until I know that it's going to be warm. And so next couple of, 30, 45 days, I think that we'll start having chickens on the farm. We have layers throughout the year, but they don't spend any time in the pasture. That's more of a personal
Mama's coop project at home.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We've got a few chickens around the house too for eggs. I haven't gone the whole chicken tractor route because trying to figure out how I can design one that'll hold enough chickens that's still small enough I can pull with my side-by-side, that's durable enough that it won't just absolutely destroy itself in the pasture in 2 weeks, that I can also pull down the blacktop road because you saw today, like I kind of have to use some of the public roads just to get to different parts of the ranch because, and maybe it's not, I'm not going to say this is a bad thing, but we restored enough creeks that are running enough water that we can't get across them anymore. And I think that's a good problem to have. But I'm like trying to find the right kind of chicken tractor design to where I can fit it into the operation. That's a challenge. It's been,
well, I can't imagine honestly the challenge that you would have in the hills that you have. For us, we're in the sand hills, but my hills are not like your hills.
They're not as tall or as steep.
Nah. And so we took, there's so many different chicken tractor styles. We took Joel Salatin's idea and modified it the way I needed to modify it. We actually made it a little taller, a little heavier, which is not good if you're trying to pull them without like an ATV or something like that. But it makes a lot of sense with the lack of trees and the high winds where we're at. And so I think that honestly, I think a lot of what we have to do in the regenerative agriculture model is find what works for us. We have an idea. Joel Salatin has done some great work as well as a laundry list of folks. But I liked Salatin's model. It made sense to me, and I had the ability to figure out to where predation is always going to be an issue when you're running poultry. I figured that out for the most part, I think, and I figured out my wind issue. And we have a serious wind issue. That probably sounds stupid to some people, but it's a big deal for us.
Well, 30, 40 mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
A lot is, it's a deal.
It is. And and unless you spend a lot of time, and obviously we're not the only state that's got high winds. I think if you talk to any of the boys up northwest, the
guys in Wyoming and Montana say, "Oh, you Kansas boys don't know what wind is." And we're like, Kansas literally means the people of the wind.
Yeah. So
the windiest city in the United States is Dodge City, and we're not very far from that.
Yeah. So we, it was hard. The chickens we started 6-7 years ago, as my wife really didn't believe me that it was a thing. And we bought the first 25 and we put them in our yard. And I had been researching and reading and thinking and just listening to different podcasts, listening to different YouTube videos and whatnot. And I put it to the test and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to run these 25 birds. We just started with 25 Cornish cross hens, and we ran them in the backyard, and I put fertilizer in the front yard, just your normal fertilizer. And I said, I
like your Scott's green lawn from Lowe's.
Yeah, from Lowe's. And I said, if this is a thing, my backyard's going to look better than my front yard. And I can't make it up. We got video of it. We got pictures of it in weeks' time. What those chickens did to my yard it was phenomenal. And so to allow them to do what it is that they do in our pastures, it would be stupid for us. We're small. We're not huge. We don't have a ton of cows. We don't have a ton of pigs. We don't run a ton of chickens. and allows us to be able to do all three of those enterprises. And it allows us to do what we need to do. I don't have thousands of acres. I got a couple of 100 acres.
I think a lot of things are easier on a smaller acreage.
Yeah.
I really do. Like it's, to get across all my acres in a day, things got to go pretty smooth for me to stay on schedule during the summer. I mean, it doesn't take but just a couple little things to get your whole schedule off, and then it's sun up to sundown for 2 or 3 days to try to get back ahead because it's such a big place and there's so much going on. And I say so much going on. Yeah, it's just cows, but there's going to be at least 3, maybe 4, possibly even 5 different herds at any given time on the ranch that I'm managing.
Yeah.
And some of those are going to be moving every day.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I love cows. If I had my druthers, I'd spend all day with the cows. But for us as a family and for us as a business, it's important for those other enterprises. And so, it'd be nice to be able to just go buy as many cows as I want. That's not in the cards. I don't even know if I had all the money in the world today that I would even do that. We like raising our own replacement heifers. That's a big deal to us. I like the cows, the size of cows that we raise. We're 99% all black Angus, which I think is, there's a lot of topics in and of that one breed that we could chase down.
There's numerous genetics wormholes that we could drop into. Yeah.
And everyone's going to have, but it works for us. And I like our cows. I like they're not big cows. They're not massive cows. If I've got cows that are around 1,000 to 1,100 pounds. I mean, our mama cows are mid frame. They're not massive, and I like it. And we pay attention to the bulls that we put in there. And I mean, I've done this not terribly long compared to a lot of people that have been on this podcast.
You've been doing it a lot longer than some people have been on this podcast too. So
in 10 years, I've never had to pull a calf. And
if you never pull one, you'll never have to.
That is true. I think it's those things that, we were kind of having this conversation at lunch, and I'm not really interested in just railing a whole bunch of commercial guys or different models or anything like that. But
we can talk about some of the things that we see as wrong in the industry. We can talk about them without making it an attack.
100%.
We can talk about them by asking questions.
Yeah.
And when you ask questions, we need to be asking from a place of genuine curiosity, not from a place of confrontation.
Right.
Like, okay, I get you said that. Why do you say that? Why does that make sense? Like the thing that we brought up earlier, 25 cows to a bull.
Yeah.
That's the ratio.
Yeah.
Why do you do it?
In all honesty, because my grandpa said so.
Okay. And I get that. And that's like, I'm sure there's probably half the people listening to this, they're doing something on their operation because that's how dad did it or that's how grandpa did it. And that's how they said to do it.
Yep.
And we haven't even thought to question the why behind that. So
Exactly.
Why did grandpa say we need 25? Why did grandpa say one bull for 25 cows? Why was that his experience?
I think for him growing up in different times for different reasons, he probably had a couple of different reasons why it was okay to him. He the accessibility that to my knowledge, and unfortunately my grandfather's not here anymore to be able to ask some of these questions, but to my knowledge, when he raised cows, when he was in the cattle industry, keeping for him, and for our family, keeping a closed, what am I trying to say?
Closed herd?
Closed herd was a big deal to him. And so there wasn't this idea of selling off a bunch of bulls, and there wasn't this idea. And again, I think this is just obviously for our family. everyone's a little different, but
I can tell you're about ready to say something.
It worked for him.
Okay.
It's what was what he thought was easiest. It was not economical. I mean, there's no way to do that. You and I talked over lunch. The 25 bulls or the 25 cows to one bull. It just doesn't make a lot of sense with a numbers game.
And the conversation was like, if you have 100 cows, okay, conventional wisdom says to put 4 bulls out there. Because I've heard that, 20 to 25 cows per bull number, and I don't get it. Like, it seems like that should be way, way low, especially for what, a bull costs these days.
Right.
So you have 100 cows, and let's just say in a hypothetical perfect world, you could get all your genetic data by just snapping your fingers. I think what a guy would find is if you had 100 cows bred, you have one bull that's covering probably 60 to 75 cows, 2 that are covering the rest, and 1 that isn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So, but how do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't know, and I think that's why a lot of the old timers, that started at, like 50 to 60 cows per bull, they started walking that backwards, to 40 to 30 to 25 because they were getting poor breed ups, and that was just one of the ways that they thought, well, I didn't have enough bull power.
Yeah.
Well, I think that a lot of guys are, quote, feeding their way to fertility, and they've got bulls that aren't doing their job. They've got one or two superstars out there that are doing most of the work, and they're just feeding a bunch of extra bulls. So that's my opinion.
Well, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I said the tough thing is then it gets into some of the things we were talking about earlier today and why there's such a focus on genetics that you and I aren't necessarily. I bought into it at one point in time, but in their mind, I will pay $10,000 for a bull because they're not going to fail me, and that's. I don't know that I would agree with that either.
I mean, it's really hard. I mean, okay, granted, somebody will come in and say, well, you can always sell semen, blah, 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 whatever. $10,000 for a bull and put them out with 25 cows. I mean, your cost of service is just ridiculously high. I don't see.
Right.
I mean, if I pay $5,000 for a bull, he better be able to cover 50.
Right.
I mean, that's still a pretty high service cost.
But it gets back to the, Mr. Mount would have lots of things to say about this, but that's a different conversation for an operation that isn't necessarily interested in. It seems that there's a way of life in this where we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, only to hope that Paul never comes back.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow. So explain that a little bit.
Well, so we can justify why we need to spend $10,000, even if $10,000 isn't in the bank and isn't economical. And so we will find that $10,000 in our operation somewhere. And I'm saying we in generalities, in a
we as the ag industry, cattle industry.
And so we will find the way to buy the bull that will make sure to cover the cows, even though that money is not necessarily allocated for this. So we will rob Peter to pay Paul, hoping that Paul never actually comes back and bites us in the butt.
Right.
And you're just kicking the can down the road, which I think then, and I think we're kind of all over the board here, but I think then gets into the succession planning that is really screwing my boys. I've got 5 boys, 4 biological and 1.
How old are they?
So the adopted son is 19. I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old next week. All boys.
You got them pretty spread out.
I was very spread out. I live in a fraternity house, and I feel sorry for my wife at times, but just at times.
My house is full of girls and girl dogs, and it has been for years.
Yeah.
Like, it might be a nice switch. Maybe I should come up and visit for a while. So does the older one help out much on the farm?
Yeah, all the boys have jobs in some way, shape, or form. So the oldest, Cameron, he actually works a full-time job and takes care of the pigs in the afternoon or any time we're moving them into different paddocks and whatnot. The Hampton, our oldest biological son, helps. He lives outdoors. All of our boys live outdoors, but that kid just, if he can be outdoors, he's interested in it. And so he helps with the pigs, he helps with the chickens, he helps with the cows. And then Hezekiah, the 9-year-old, and Henley, the 6-year-old, they're kind of over the layers. Hoxton is just kind of along for the ride. He's the 4-year-old.
Well, he's 4.
Yeah, exactly. But he's digging it. They all love the animals. We also have some horses, and so the older 3 boys are learning how to rope right now, and so
wait till they start roping the youngest one.
Well, it's already happened. So yeah, I mean they all have jobs. Sometimes I think they wish they didn't have as much, and sometimes I wish that I think they wish they didn't go to school at all and they could just be outside with the animals all day long.
Instead of going to building school, go to farm school.
Go to farm school, yeah.
Well, coming up next week, we'll be talking to Matt Kleffer, who homeschools his kids, so make sure you guys come back for next week's interview with Matt Kleffer.
Yeah.
And hopefully I don't have to edit that out later. Okay, so you mentioned your grandfather had a closed herd of cattle. Mm-hmm. Did you get some of those?
Honestly, yeah, I did. I was raised with horses, raised with sheep, chickens, and rabbits, and 4-H was a big deal. And so we were a part of all that and whatnot, but we never raised cows at that point in time. My parents never did. And so as I got older, it was something I was always interested in. And as Grandma and Grandpa continued to age.
So Grandma and Grandpa, they had cows.
They had cows.
And you guys were doing the 4-H stuff. What did your parents do?
My parents, at that point in time in my life, real estate agent and insurance agent.
So not so much of a succession plan for the farm for them.
Not a chance, actually. And in all honesty, by the time I came around and understood what was going on, we've got a lot of land that didn't have a lot of animals on them. And I think my mom has a brother and a sister, and I think they all just kind of went their separate ways. And were doing their own thing. And so we always had horses. Horses were a big deal when I was growing up. We lived in the city limits, so we couldn't technically have cows. But we could get away with sheep, and sheep are stupid. They're so stupid. I apologize if that's offensive to anybody, but
you're not the first person to say it on the podcast, and I think maybe the first person that did say it might have even owned some sheep.
Yeah, I don't. My boys want sheep so bad, and it's just not going to happen if I have anything to do with it. When I was growing up, we had an indoor or in-ground pool, and I mean, I can't tell you how many times we would wake up on a Saturday morning and those sheep were in the pool. And it's like, whoa, my dad.
Were they swimming or drowning?
Well, a little bit of both, I think. So none of them ever died in the pool, thank God. But they were it just was a mess. And I've never wanted to own sheep. You get into this and realize what they offer. What their intelligence isn't high, but what they offer as a protein, or even with their byproducts and things along those lines, like it'd be a cool idea. I'm just not interested.
You just don't want to have sheep because
not at all.
You don't want to deal with sheep. That's stupid. I get that. And there's guys that feel the same way about pigs. There's guys that feel the same way about horses and.
Oh, listen, I have a love-hate relationship with the pigs, and it is more hate than love. The only thing I love about them is the way they taste. But it made sense for when we decided to do it. It had more to do with our pasture than it had to do with the desire to raise pigs. I do think we have an obligation and a duty to take care of the lands that my grandfather was an Eagle Scout, and one of the mottos of the Eagle Scouts that I may be wrong in this, so if you know, please correct me, but one of his sayings anyway that he said he got from being a scout was "leave it better than you found it." And so
I'm not a Boy Scout, but yeah. I can definitely believe that, and that's not the first time I've heard the "leave it better than you found it."
Yeah. And so that was a big deal for us growing up. It's been a big deal for my wife and I raising our boys, and I think that applies to where we live. And there's going to be a day where I don't walk on this earth anymore, and so to have the slogan "leave it better than you found it" in regards to our pastures, that's a big deal to us. I don't know that we always do the best. I think we're always striving to do better, but if I can leave these pastures to my boys better than what I found them, that's a real big deal. And so the pigs really kind of came. I had done some research and some reading, and what the pigs have the ability to offer in the rooting up of the seed bed. I was in a spot where we could try it, and we did. And it was successful in what we needed it to do. The journey was less fun than cows, but then the meat was phenomenal. And it was like, well, I want to continue to eat this. Everybody I sold it to wants to continue to eat it. I guess we'll just continue to raise pigs.
I'm going to have to get some of your bacon next year.
Yeah.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, a couple months and we'll be good. A couple months and we'll send them all to the butcher.
So you said that they don't necessarily follow your cows, and that's fine. So what kind of hog breed, and are you buying feeder pigs, or you have a breeder you buy from?
We do not have a specific breeder. I think we started this 2 years ago. With the pigs, and so I'm not deep into the pigs. And COVID, I think, really messed that up in regards to finding a breeder and sticking with that breeder. But everything that we run is a Burke Hamp cross.
Okay,
I think everyone that we and that was this year. We raised some Durocs last year that I really liked. I just couldn't get my hands on them this year. And so for us, it was finding feeder pigs, 40, 50, 60 pounds would be a little big for us. And so, yeah, we pick them up and just feed them out.
What do you have to do to keep those in? Like, I have a friend down in Oklahoma that keeps a few pigs, and Kirkdale keeps a few too. And it's just about like a hot wire that's about mid shin high, maybe one strand.
Yeah. We actually run 2 strands. And it's just the poly wire.
It's not like they can really jump very high, is it?
They can't. And once they, for the most part, once they understand what's happening, like the other day when they got out, our dog, we have livestock guardian dogs, and I'm not quite sure what happened. We weren't home. I'm assuming the dog did something that it shouldn't have done, and so the fence had gotten down. But once they get trained to that hot wire, it's actually pretty hard even sometimes to get them to move, because they have it in their mind that
there used to be a fence
there.
I get that 100% with cows too.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we run 2 strand, and our paddocks, we run 13 right now. So our paddocks aren't massive. But they're big enough to where we don't move them every single day. We don't live where our home is and where we raise the pigs. We don't live on a huge we 10 and a quarter acres. So it's not massive, but it's enough.
I have to commute to work too, to the range.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know that we'll ever do more than what we're doing right now, which is 13. There's really no reason for it. I don't have a reason. And the inability really to find a butcher these days, or to be consistent in that butcher,
right.
It just is too difficult. So it doesn't look like we would, in the near future anyway, we would get too much more than what we're doing right now.
Okay. So let's go back to your cows before we got sidetracked onto the hogs. There are cows you got. You're telling me how you got some of these cows out of your grandpa's closed herd.
Yep. So the story behind Corner House Cattle is interesting to me, and probably maybe a little distasteful to most. I started with four heifers from my grandpa's herd, and had them bred, and we had raised them, and a couple of years. They were great cows. I'll never forget 2015. We had that one of the main fires that actually came through my property, and we had a calf drop 5 days before that fire came through. We had a pair of horses, and we had 6 cows. Let me think. We would have had 2 cows, 2 heifers, so it'd be 5, and this calf. When that fire came through, and I thought, well, these are gone. And we got back up there after that next day after the fire. We thought our house was gone, and everything was just.
It's not a fun drive driving.
It's not
going down that road and thinking, is this going to be there when I get there?
Yeah,
like I have lived through that too.
Yeah, that is. We just actually did a service last night at church for a bunch of the Cottonwood Complex fire families. That if you're familiar with our area, we just had a really terrible fire come through and destroy a whole bunch of homes, a lost life through it. Like 100 different outbuildings were destroyed. I mean, it's real bad.
I have friends that live up there on Victory Road, just south of the G intersection. They were a half a mile away from that monster.
Yeah, if you've never experienced fire, like actually experienced fire in that manner, it is traumatic.
Watching a wildfire burn through cedar trees, a cedar grove in front of a 40-mile-an-hour dry wind is something that everybody should see once from a very, very safe distance, because it is impressive.
Yeah.
And the speed at which a fire like that can move, it'll blow your mind if you've never seen it.
Well, so that night, I had watched that fire come, and we really thought it was going to pass to the north. Well, it did pass to the north, but myself and some of our neighbors, we just hadn't taken care of the cedar trees the way we needed to. And that fire jumped from one cedar tree to the next all the way into our pasture. And my neighbor is our insurance agent, and he called me at 11 o'clock just bawling his eyes out saying, Sean, your house is gone. Sean, your house is gone. I'm so sorry. And so when we woke up, and I had dropped the fences to get, I didn't have any place to go.
Right.
The animals didn't have, and we have a small pond up front. And I thought, well, I'm going to drop fences, and if they can get gone, they can get gone, and we'll figure it out later. And so we had snuck up that next day, because, they got all the roads blocked off and they won't let you up. And that doesn't matter if you got livestock up there. And so we found a way in.
Yeah, the guy manning the roadblock's not going to take your word for it, even if you're in a pickup with a bale on the back.
And so we drove up, and I mean, I'll never forget it. I can see it right now. We drove up, and there's a bunch of cedar trees, and then there's just a clearing, and you have the ability to see our house. And sure enough, it was standing there, and everything was fine. Everything was burnt around. I thought, well, okay, these cows are going to be gone. And it was a big deal to me. My grandfather and my uncle gave me these cows. Not that, they wouldn't have been mad at me that the fire had taken them, but it was a big deal to me.
Well, it's part of your grandfather's heritage, part of the herd that he built.
Right.
And while we're here, let's just say that, there's two ways to get good cows.
Yeah.
You buy the ranch they're standing on, or you make your own.
Yeah.
And in your case, your grandfather had been working on those genetics for a long time in that area, in that environment. So, you might have been able to take those cows to the sale barn, but they're worth way more to you than what they would have brought at the barn.
Yeah, 100%. And so we got up there, and both of our horses, all of our cows, there wasn't a singed hair on them. And I don't know how it happened, man. I mean, it was just by the grace of God. And they were in the pasture. They weren't in my yard. They weren't down the road. They were in the pasture. And
let me guess, you go out there and the entire pasture is just uniformly black.
Oh,
everything is
yep.
black. And the cows are just standing there like nothing happened going, somebody going to find some grass today?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. It was mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. And so anyhow, that was a really long story to just tell you that we had these cows from my grandfather. And then, a couple years later, I played baseball in college, and I'm still real good friends with a couple of those guys. And I had kicked around the idea of wanting to buy some more cows. And, we got done with a hunting trip. They come, and some of them are from out of state. A couple of them are from here in Kansas, and we'd got done with a hunting trip at the end of November, and they're like, "All right, man, let's do this." And so we ended up buying. I would never go about, if you're going to invest in cows. I don't know that I would ever do it the way that we did it, but I had little to no knowledge in what we were doing.
That's okay. That experience, that knowledge, education, it's always expensive. And
it has been. It's been a lot of fun, and we've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm grateful for those lessons. It's just not, you don't buy mama cows to generate money. And you know that, but until you get into it, and it is a blessing for me today. Though Grandpa had cows and Uncle Pete has ran cows and whatnot, it was a blessing for me today that I got to start from scratch in a lot of ways. I didn't take over an operation that has been going the same way for generations on end. But I also didn't have the experience that those generations before me had. And so, we've done a lot of stupid stuff, probably not even necessarily always financially wise. But today, we've kind of turned some of that corner in that we got the ability to produce some of our own beef today, and we're very proud of that as well.
Okay. Well, before we talk about Corner House Cattle Company, let's talk about Sean.
Okay.
So you're from the Hutch area.
Well, the first 12 years of my life, I grew up in St. John, which is you obviously.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's just like another 10 miles north.
Yeah. And loved St. John. Still got a lot of friends from St. John. Not a lot. I got a few friends still from St. John. In 8th grade, I moved to Hutchinson, graduated from Buhler. Hutch is my home. I love Hutchinson. If I have my way, we ain't never going anywhere.
And that's like kind of the northeast part of town.
Yeah. It is. It would be the northeast. If you know where Buhler is, or Medora, which is just a few miles north of Hutchinson, we're in between Hutch and Medora.
Okay.
So yeah, like 5 minutes. I mean, we don't have country like you have country.
Low rolling sand hills covered with cedar trees and really expensive houses.
100%.
Yeah. Like perfect fire trap.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So you moved back to Hutch.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to college. I went and played baseball at Butler Community College out of high school. And then transferred to Central Christian College in McPherson, and that's where I ended up graduating. There's a couple other stories in there with a couple other colleges, but
I could tell that you're leaving out a few things and not letting me not showing me those rabbits to chase. I get that. So what's your degree in?
My degree is actually in psychology. So
if I would have known that, we might have done this a little bit different.
Yeah. Listen, I am grateful for the experience that I had in college, and I'm grateful for the upbringing that I had. I missed out on a lot of stuff, that a lot of passions, a lot of things for baseball. But I loved baseball, and I wanted to play baseball as long as I could. And so, I went to Butler out of high school, ended up tearing my elbow my second year there, and so I had to have surgery. Any surgery, when it comes to, well, really anything is it's a process. And
right.
So you have to do all your rehab and everything like that. And had an interesting time in college in the middle of that, and found myself at Central Christian College, playing baseball, just trying to earn a degree. And so anyhow, long and short of it, I took a year or two off of college, and then ended up going back in 2010 and finishing my degree.
So with the degree in psychology,
yeah,
and then we ended up at Central. You said Central Christian
College in McPherson.
So how does that tie in to you being a pastor? That's what I'm trying to tie together here.
It's a very, very long story. But
we got time, brother.
Yeah. Okay. I was a pitching coach, for Sterling College, a Gambino's pizza delivery guy, and a part-time police officer in Inman, Kansas, when I started talking to this girl named Heather. Heather, I've known since I was in the 5th grade. Though we lived in St. John, we were commuting back and forth to Hutchinson for church.
Okay.
And so I've known Heather for a long time, but I asked Heather on a date, and we start talking things along those lines. We start dating, and a position opened at the church of which she worked at, of which her father is also the senior pastor of.
Okay.
And so there was a janitor's position with a part-time youth pastor position open, and I applied. That was in 2009. No, it's 2008, spring of 2008. And so I had quit all those other jobs, the pitching coach, the pizza delivery guy, and the part-time police officer, to fill that position. In all honesty, because I thought it was going to be an easy gig.
Youth pastor and janitor.
Yeah.
Or is that janitor and youth pastor?
Probably more janitor than youth pastor at the time.
Okay.
But I got into it and I loved it. It was way harder than what I thought it was going to be, which was a bit of a disappointment at that time. But I loved the job and I loved the kids. And so anyhow, we kept working there. I kept working there. Heather and I ended up getting married fall of 2009, and worked there for a year. And Heather really encouraged me to go back and get my degree. And I really wanted to become a marriage and family therapist. And that was really, I loved my job, and I saw that job, or the idea of counseling and therapy, I didn't necessarily have to leave the ministry for. But I didn't know that I, at that time, was going to be a pastor, like, for the rest of my life. And so went back and finished. I just had a year left, and finished my degree in psychology, and immediately applied for a master's program at Friends University in marriage and family therapy. And I got turned down. And I got turned down because I didn't have a good GPA, and I didn't have a good GPA because I had some really great times in college.
Just played baseball and had fun.
Yeah. And so that was devastating to me at the time. but really felt like through prayer that where I was where I was supposed to be. And so I've never left. I've been there 13 years. So
That's great.
yeah.
Same church?
Same church. I would consider it my home church. It was the church that I grew up going to in regards to youth and whatnot. And so I was 10 when we started going to that church, 10, 11.
So you've been there, 3 or 4 times at least. Okay.
Times.
Fair enough. Tell me about the most memorable wreck you've had and what it taught you.
Wreck. Most memorable wreck.
Like not vehicle wreck. I mean, like with livestock or with land.
Stockmanship has become a really big deal to me it's always animals, growing up, learning how to hunt and fish, take care of the animals, eat what you kill, eat what you catch type of deal. I've always had an appreciation, and a love for animals. Understanding how they think, became important to me over the course of the last couple of years. And it did, because it wasn't necessarily a wreck I was involved with. It was, it had more to do with, just the unappreciation for a bunch of calves I was helping a guy work. And just the atmosphere that, simple changes that wouldn't be very difficult to fix, that would lower the stress on the animals. And instead of lowering stress on the animals, we just shoot hormones in their ear and tell them to get over it type of deal. And that's not even necessarily a knock on the hormones if that's your gig. It was just the entire setup of the day. It was just difficult. It was disappointing. And for me, I would never say that I'm the best stockman. I have so much to grow there in that area, of which I think any good stockman would probably say,
I'm kind of okay, but there's still a lot that I have to figure out.
Yeah. There's just so much left and, to know. And yet, it is a big deal. Is one of the things that we spent the last 18 months, trying to figure out, even when it comes to working calves, how do we put them in a roe deer and with their moms, and we work them off a horseback. There was just an article released by Oregon State, I don't know, the last month, talking about the cortisol levels. And it was a small group.
I think I saw that it was cortisol levels and different weaning strategies.
Yes. And the lowest cortisol level was with the moms. And so you weren't separating them. And it was with the moms, and it was without, you were basically dragging.
Yeah. It was, they were working calves. Like they had to do, shots and castrate and those kind of things. And they figured out how to measure. Yeah. They measure the cortisol and go on.
Well, so that is it, for me. There's a lot in the regenerative agriculture model that I've got to get better at. But stress and stockmanship on my animals is a big deal to me. And so I would never say that I have the perfect paddock size. I would never say that I move my cows or we'll stick with cows as many times as I should, or the right amount, or anything like that. Like that's always adjusting and always moving and always ebbing and flowing. But the one thing that I know that I for sure feel like I can do a really great job at is taking care of the cows as low a stress as possible. And yet the calves still have to be worked. We don't do they have to be worked in the manner of, for us, branding and tagging.
Right.
We don't, there's no antibiotics or anything unless we have to, in our cows. And so our calves don't get any sort of antibiotics.
And you probably don't need to have much of a vaccine program either, do you?
We don't, only when I absolutely have to. And if that's the case, then we those cows still have a very healthy life with us. They're just not in our butchering program.
Right.
And so So for us, it was one of those things like dealing with cortisol levels, dealing with like how do I do this in such a low stress. I mean, it was one of those things. I think Hobbs has done this before, where he butchered on farm. Like I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, he did that when he was still up in Oregon.
Yeah. I saw that and thought that was so awesome.
It would even be better to be able to take to go out to the animal where it's standing there grazing.
Exactly.
And pop it while its head's down in the grass and then string them up and bleed them out. Like, I think that's the best, most humane, lowest stress way on the animal. Second to that would be, doing an on farm where, you go get the animal where you're in the pasture and you just bring the animal up and do it right there. But low stress. Go on.
It's a big deal for us. And so, our goal is to work cows, or calves, when needed by horseback. I wouldn't say we do it all the time. I wouldn't say we even probably do, a great job at it most times. But it is something we're working towards. And I don't even necessarily know how we got on this subject other than it's just a really big deal to me. Stockmanship is just a really big deal to me. Finding those areas where we allow the cows to do what cows do best, and also needing to help them where we need help.
Well, I mean, stockmanship's important. I mean, it's part of a core skill set of, animal husbandry. We need to be able to know that when we go out to our pastures and I'm going to say talk to our cows, communicate with them. When your cattle are stressed out simply because of your presence in the pasture, they're not going to be communicating the same things to you that they would if they were relaxed by your presence in the pasture. So, like we talked about a little bit this morning. Okay. So I can go out and drive through my cows on my side by side and they don't react.
Right.
It doesn't disturb them. I can go sit on a hill and watch them and they can ignore me because I've been very consistent for the last couple of years of how I act in different vehicles with those cows. And then you saw it when they saw the feed truck. Well, they didn't even see us. They heard us and they started running.
Yeah.
That's going to happen with your feed wagon no matter what.
Yeah.
But maybe if you're only feeding every third day and you take your feed wagon out every day, they're not going to react like that. And maybe if you take your feed wagon out and just sit there for a while and let them come up, see what's going on, and then calm down and go back to grazing, that's more of a behavior that you want rather than just come out, let them run up to you and say, okay, they're here, then turn around and leave.
Right.
You want them to, every time we go to the pasture, we're teaching our cows.
100%.
Okay. We're teaching our cows about us, about what we're doing, and about maybe not what they should be doing, but they're learning from us every time that we're out in the pasture. Mm-hmm. And so I think about what am I teaching my cows while I'm out here? And that's a part of stockmanship.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think, if we take for granted our presence and we take for granted, we look at them as animals, and they're just an animal and they'll get over it. And I think just having a respect for who it is that they are and what it is that they're doing, and even going about it in the manner in which we've asked them to do in these small paddocks, moving day to day and things along those lines. Like, I don't know, I just got a little bit more respect for them than just beef standing on the hoof still.
I would agree with that. I think maybe that's something that sets us a little bit apart, on the regenerative side. When we are spending a lot of time with our livestock and we're out there with it, and we understand the connection between the land, the soil, and the livestock, and that we're just, sometimes at best an observer of that connection.
Yeah.
We understand that and we respect what they can do for the land, and we respect what the land does for our cattle, and we treat the land and our cattle with a lot more respect.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And I think it's in that manner, for me, everything is a connection back to what God has blessed us with in this. And And so you take care of the things the way that God intended them to be taken care of, and you end up with great looking pastures and great looking animals, and the tastiest of beef.
I look at it that I am privileged to bear the burden to be the steward of this land.
100%. Yeah, that's great.
Privileged to bear the burden.
Yeah. And at times, I mean, it's a bigger burden. It is a burden is a good word.
Yeah. When you get to sit there and watch the flames of a wildfire come screaming across your ranch.
Yeah.
It's not very much fun, but then when you get those baby calves on the ground in the early spring and, the grass starts waking up and you see the baby deer, and then a couple months later, you get to see all the quail. Yeah. It's rewarding. Winter, for me, fall and winter is my hardest time. Like I almost always end up getting depressed, and it kind of is the worst toward the end of February and into March. But then you get into March and we start getting some moisture, start getting some warm days. I start feeling a lot better.
I growing up, I always loved the winter time because winter meant it was hunting season, and I do love to hunt. That was a tradition that's been passed down generation after generation in my family, and that's something that I'll pass down to the boys. But today, I have a huge appreciation for the spring, and that new life, and seeing those calves run across the pasture. It is definitely rewarding in that manner.
So we mentioned something about hormones a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Do we want to open that can of worms or just go screaming right on by?
I'm good. I'm good with talking about it.
I guess we don't necessarily have to get too deep into it, but I think that's one of those questions that we really need to be asking. Like, is this a practice that we should continue in this industry? And I totally get why. Like, we take steers, we remove their testes so they stop making testosterone, because testosterone makes hard chiseled muscle. Mm-hmm. Okay. And hard chiseled muscle doesn't look good in the meat case. That's not what the American consumer wants to see in the meat case. They want to see that marbled ribeye.
Right.
Well, you can't get that when there's a lot of testosterone in the animal. The way you get that round, fluffy, soft muscle with some extra fat on it is you got to pump them full of estrogen. So we got a bunch of boys that don't know they're boys because we took their balls, and then we're going to put growth hormone in them to make them gain better.
Right.
Like, okay, I get that. I get that, if you're over in Flint Hills and you're taking them in by the head not by the head by the day, on a rate of gain. If you're doing a rate of gain thing and you need to make, 2.5 pounds a head a day, fine. That's not what I want to be into. That's not, to me, growth hormones are almost the worst kind of high octane input.
Yeah.
Because we're taking this animal and we're giving it something synthetic to make it perform above and beyond its genetic potential. And then we're going to stuff it full of high energy feed.
Yeah.
That goes down roads of causing, fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic liver disease and those kinds of things. Is this really what we need to be doing with our food supply?
Well, to preface this with, if you are implanting hormones, I'm not here to tell you you're a bad person or tell you you're doing it wrong or anything like that.
And I'm not saying that either.
100% you're not. You never have, and it's one of the things I really appreciate about you. I just looked at your bowl today.
Okay,
that bowl is a prime example of why you don't need. And I realize bulls, steers. I realize it may be apples and oranges, but it's not to me. I think we consistently have given our communities an idea of what beef tastes like, and that's not actually what it tastes like.
And when they get a piece of grass fed, they're like, "Oh, this is gamey."
Yeah.
No, that's beef.
Yeah.
That's how beef is supposed to taste.
And even to like this idea of fat, like fat is flavor, and fat is not that's not true. I would put and I realize everybody's palate is different. I realize this is a debatable topic or a debatable statement, but I don't need a 1/4 inch of fat on the end of a steak to add flavor to my beef.
Right.
My beef has flavor. And I don't even like this idea of gaminess. I realize where it comes from, and I realize what people are saying. No, that's what beef tastes like.
And it's not gamey.
It's not gamey.
It's you're tasting what the cow ate the last 6 months of its life.
Right.
You're tasting all the flavonoids and the terpenes and the tannins of what that cow's diet was.
Right.
And the reason you don't get that when you go to a Walmart meat case and pick out, generic shrink wrap crap from Tyson or whatever, is that animal ate a lot of corn and soy,
Right.
On a TMR, standing in a feedlot, might have been implanted with growth hormones, might have been shot full of, well, I guess I can't call it subtherapeutic antibiotics because that's not what they say. They say they're just high risk animals.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Lost my place. But yeah, that's, is that really what beef should be tasting like? Or is that just what the industrial commodity production system has made it taste like over the last 30 or 40 years? When we're eating that quote gamey tasting grass-fed beef, okay, that gamey taste that some people might find a little bit off, that's extra nutrients.
Right.
Like that stuff, that's stuff your body's craving that it needs that it's not getting anywhere else.
I am not here to say we have to take all commercial cattle to this grass finished. I'm not. You're going to do what you're going to do, and that's fine.
Right. If feedlots aren't going away tomorrow,
go away. They're not going to go away. And I'm not here to make you feel bad about the decisions that you've made or that you're making on how. I'm saying for me, it is important that we're raising grass finished beef that I know exactly what's been put into them. I know exactly what pastures they've been. I want, like, the coolest thing, one of the coolest things I think we could ever offer to our customers is, hey, do you want to come out to the pasture and pick out your cow?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, maybe it's stupid to some, but like to be able to say, there's
a percentage of people that are going to be turned off by that. Like,
yeah.
You want me to come meet my meat?
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that. Just hand it to me in a box. Yeah. And then there'll be the subset of people that'll be like, wait a minute, I can come pet it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to come pet it.
Yeah.
And they'll come out and pet it and they'll, rub it and love on it and take pictures. And then 6 months later, when they're serving their friends a steak from that cow, they'll whip out the pictures and be like, check this out.
Yeah.
I went and petted this cow. I went and met this cow, saw where it was raised, saw the pasture it was in. So I was talking to my mom last night, and she had just seen a social media post that I'd done, and we talked about it earlier, and it fits in with the theme. Like, we're asking questions, and, are we using antibiotics? What is a high-risk animal? What is the percentage of high-risk animals that come on your yard? We haven't even really started the whole growth hormone conversation on social media yet. Like, we'll get into that one soon. Yeah. We'll figure out how to fight that fight and start asking those questions. Well, not fight that fight. We'll just figure out how to start asking those questions.
Right.
So my mom was asking me, like, well, how do I know that it hasn't? How do I know that the chicken or whatever that I buy doesn't have antibiotics in it? Because I asked at the store and they didn't know. And I said, they're never going to know at the store, Mom.
Yeah.
Even if you go to Whole Foods, they're not going to know.
Right.
The one and only way to know for sure what has been done to that meat or done to that food is to go shake the hand that feeds you.
Exactly. And you have, like I said earlier, you've coined that term, and it's been a big deal for what it is that we do. I think COVID in some ways was...
The thought occurs to me that I need to put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, you 100% do. Yes, you 100% do. I think I hesitate to say this because COVID did some really unhealthy things. Obviously, one of the things that it helped with is being able to shake the hand that feeds you. At least in our community, for us,
I don't think it changed a lot in places like LA, Chicago, or New York, but here
for us, it did.
It changed. It definitely changed. And all across the Midwest, in any place where it's reasonably rural. Yeah, I think it changed a lot. Yeah, but the dense urban centers, I don't think it moved the needle.
Yeah, and I think that that statement, though, shake the hand that feeds you, is a statement that we as farmers and ranchers, we have to continue to use in the communities that we find ourselves in. And whether that's your friend group, whether that is the congregation of the church that you serve, whatever it may be, having this conversation is a really big deal, because you're right. Dylan's isn't going to be able to tell you. No. Whole Foods, as much as they think they can, ain't going to be able to tell you.
No, because Whole Foods has contracts with, they want to get those big supply contracts so they can ensure their supply and ensure their prices like every other big business. And, there's no way around that. The only way to get past that, I think, is to go to like the public food hub model that Mike Callicrate likes to talk about. Speaking of Mike Callicrate, he's probably due again for another appearance.
Yeah. Well, someone had just posted the other day when you had asked on Facebook, hey, who should we bring back? And Mike was one of them. And Mike has the ability to speak to that on some really great levels.
Yeah. Fortunately, I've gotten, I'm ahead. So right now, like I said, we're recording this from the time you guys hear it. This was 2 weeks ago. We had this conversation. Yeah. So I'm scheduled out into May, and things are looking good, and hopefully I can maintain that trend and stay ahead. And so I guess what that means for listeners of the podcast is, for the last several months that we've been talking about some kind of current events on the Monday show. I'm going to try to get to the point where I'm ahead on the Monday show away, so it's less stressful on me, and we're going to move the current events to the Friday shows.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So we'll see how the Friday shows go. We might end up tweaking that or changing back in the future, but I'm trying to get a back catalog built up, so I've got I'm 6 or 8 ahead as we go into summer and growing season, and I've got wiggle room in case things blow up in my face someday. So that's what we're trying to do here. But, some other things going on. We're seeing this as this Russia-Ukraine thing develops, and like I said, it's going to be a couple weeks before this comes out. And in the last 2 weeks, I've heard a lot of really scary things. Yeah, like Ukraine and Russia. That's 30% of the global wheat trade. It's like 20% of some fertilizers and some other stuff. It's higher, and it scares me because there could be some serious shortage of calories in the world in the very near future, and and not even looking at potential food shortages. Let's just think about China's restricting exports of phosphates. Now we're going to have less fertilizers coming out of Europe. We're going to have a lot less wheat coming out of Russia and Ukraine. Things don't, and we're in drought.
Yes.
We're in a really bad drought, which, kind of comes to mind. I guess most of the corn belt, east and north of here, it's not there yet. Yeah. But, I fear that it may be moving that way. So we've got drought. We've got diesel was $4.79 a gallon.
It sure is.
I would hate to be looking at that 620 horse John Deere tractor to hook up to a 40-foot tool and get ready to go pull it across the farm field and burn almost 50 gallons of diesel fuel an hour.
Yeah, it's just another blessing that I have is we don't have implements. A couple of months ago on TikTok, someone asked me what it would take to start, or what equipment do I have, and I got I don't have equipment. I got a truck. I don't even have a bale bed on the back of my truck. I got a bale buggy that I hook up to my truck. Got a trailer when I need to haul cows. And
What do you need to get started?
yeah,
A little bit of brain power.
yeah.
I mean, you don't need oodles and buckets of money. You don't even need to buy cows. Like, there's guys doing it, and you know this as well as I do. There's guys making a living ranching that do not own the pickup, do not own the cows, and do not own the land.
Yeah.
Like, they might own a couple reels of polywire and a charger and maybe a decent dog.
Yeah.
And they can go out and they can find a piece of ground, then go find some cows and put the cows on the ground and make it all work and make money doing it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of guys that have gotten their start in ranching doing that on the side.
Yeah.
Without a lot of capital investment, like leased cows, leased land, and leased equipment.
Yeah. You know, I think that even when it comes to kind of what you were just talking about in regards to just the chaos of the world and where everything is going and what that looks like in the near future and even longer into the future, it's not hard to raise some chickens. It's not hard to figure out how to lease land or these things aren't difficult. I don't know. I think that there maybe is a fine line. I would appreciate the care for the animal. But we were talking about this earlier. You can find eggs on the corner of every corner in Hutchinson right now because people are raising their own eggs, and that moves to raising their own gardens, and that moves. And I think that stuff's important today.
I think, like I said, it'll be 2 weeks before this comes out. Right when this comes out, it should be like perfect planting window.
Yeah.
For summer crops, like I'll be planting corn.
Yeah. When
this episode comes out, be trying to get my beans in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
I've already got the potatoes in, the onions will be in, tomatoes will be about ready to go outside. Like, I'm serious, folks. If you're out there listening, you should be planting a garden. Yeah. You should be trying to grow something. I mean, even if it's 2 tomato plants out on your balcony, get started and get that experience growing that stuff because, guys, the next couple of years are going to get weird.
Yeah.
I can promise you things are going to get really weird over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Almost exactly 2 years ago, right when, COVID restrictions first were put in place and people were just kind of starting to go, ooh, this is weird. Dallas Mount from RMC, they put on Ranching for Profit School. They put out an email to all the grads, or maybe it was just Executive Link members because I was still on Executive Link at the time, and said, we're gonna get on Zoom, we're gonna talk about COVID, and we're gonna come up with some strategies. And I'm thinking, okay, great. Dallas will have it. Dallas will have some answers. He'll have some knowledge. And he got on there and he said a few things and that I pretty much agreed with. And then he said, supply chains might be a little bit weird for 3 to 6 months, but they could get better. And it's like,
Yeah.
I said, no. If there's any supply chain disruptions that we see in the next 6 months, it's going to last 18 months.
Yeah.
And here we are 2 years down the line, and they're just getting worse.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it out there. Supply chain disruptions will continue to get worse. Input cost will continue to rise.
Yeah.
And that's the reality we're facing.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. And, I think it has made, direct to consumer, businesses in regards to, what it is that we do. It has made our lives difficult, even in regards to the butchering. We had that conversation this morning where we live and, in the region that we live, in the state that we live, and there's not a better state in my eyes than Kansas. I don't care what anybody says. I love Kansas. But there is not enough butchers. There just isn't, and there's not enough space. And we need,
have you seen where they're all at on the map?
I have. Well, yeah.
You can pretty much draw a line down through Hutch.
Yeah.
North and south, and they're all east of there.
Yeah.
Like, there's a new one that opened up out in Meade, Kansas, which is kind of southwest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how many head they're looking to run, but it's almost like the whole western 2/3 of Kansas is a giant black hole for meat processing. There's no small lockers left because the big mega plants out there around Liberal and Dodge City and Garden City vacuumed up all those jobs and all the talent and all the cattle. And you've got to get 100 miles away from that before you find a small plant. And it's the same way going. Well, I don't know it's the same way going down 54, but you go down 54 into New Mexico and it's just feedlot after feedlot after feedlot after feedlot after packing plant after feedlot. Like, I don't think I'll ever make that drive, that drive again down to Tucumcari across the Panhandle, Texas. I'll take the long way, take 160 or Highway 400 around. It's just, that was pretty depressing.
Yeah, we one of the guys that's part of Cornerhouse Cattle, he lives down in Albuquerque, and I go down there and hunt once a year, and making that drive, like, it just every single time, it's just mind boggling. It is, but the going back to the butcher spots, I think they're obviously doing what they can and what they're able to do, but there's, for us and where we're at, we have a need in that manner.
What would you like to see fill that need? Would you like to see on-farm slaughter, which you kind of talked about, or would you like to see some more small plants?
Yeah, I would personally love to see the on-farm slaughter. I don't know. I mean, that would be, I could be wrong, but that would be such a niche market there. I'm not sure that it would be sustainable. I could be wrong though. I mean, because I could be wrong, and I'm not going to speak to rules and laws that I don't know in regards to the USDA side of things. But even if there's, have you heard of Phil's Farms? It is,
enlighten me.
Yeah, it is a small USDA butcher shop that is in Pleasant View, which is just west of South Hutch there.
I go through Pleasant View on my way up to your part of the world.
Yeah. And they've done a really great job. It's who used to process all of our poultry. They're fantastic, but they're small. And they only have the ability to do so much. Even Crable's up in McPherson, Crable Specialty Meats, they did a great job of expanding a little bit, but their expansion still isn't enough.
And they don't have, like, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have a whole lot more room to expand without having to do a major reconfiguring of a bunch of stuff.
It's very true. And so, I think that there's a new place that opened over by Hillsboro in the last year, or is opening. Maybe it's not open yet. I'm not sure. I know that there are new places coming up. We just need more. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that speaks to people having the desire to shake the hand that feeds them. I do think that, and I'm not, I realize it's a huge financial endeavor to do, but you got a bunch of ranchers that need more butcher spots.
Agreed. And the capital to get the plant, or the capital to get a mobile slaughter unit, that's one thing. Finding the guy to run it.
Yeah.
Finding the guy to manage, that packing plant that's going to manage, the product coming in, the product going out, and get schedule everything and make sure that all your food police rules are taken care of and all those plans are done. Finding that guy.
Oh yeah.
That's probably that's the hardest part of the whole operation.
Yeah.
Not getting the money. I think the money is, well, things have probably changed in the last month or so, but capital, that kind of capital should be fairly easy to access and get a hold of. And, talking with guys like Mike Calicrate, you hear about different sides of, and different train wrecks that people have been through, with either a mobile meat trailer or trying to have a processing co-op. We hear about some of them, and we don't always necessarily know why they failed. Like, well, that one didn't work and they're done anymore. Well, that they just quit because the guy that was doing it was 65 and wanted to be done with it, and just closed up shop. I think a lot of that has happened.
Yeah.
And there's some programs out there now that are actually teaching kids how to cut meat.
Yeah.
Like Montana State University. I think that last episode I did with Mike, he was there. He just sold him the trailer and they're trying to get that program going. Like, that's something that we didn't even know that we needed until we realized that we didn't have it.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. That is 100% true. Yeah.
And when you think about it, I take a step back and I think, okay, so if I wanted to learn how to be a butcher and even just take apart a pig, where would I go do that?
Yeah. There's actually this really cool guy on Instagram. I'll send him to you. I don't know him at all. I wish I could. I can't even think of his name, but his entire business model is that right there. He brings people into their home, and he teaches people how to break down hogs. It's fascinating for me because it's like I have butchered deer all my life since I've been able to hunt, but I'm doing it how I want to do it, not how I know that it should be done. Right? I'm not interested in doing that to a hog. Like if I'm going to break down a hog, I want to know what I'm doing,
right?
And to find those people. And I do think that there are probably more people that are way more interested in that today than if I knew how to butcher my own hogs, that I don't need as many butcher spots then.
Well, our generation, we're close enough. We're the same generation. I was pretty much told you got to go to college and you got to get a college degree if you ever want to make anything in life. If you're ever going to be anything in life, you have to have a college degree. If you don't have a college degree, you won't be able to get any kind of a decent job. You'll never be able to make any money.
Right.
I didn't go.
Yeah. And
I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I didn't go is, I was mostly done with school, but are the programs of value? What do we really need in society? We're not going to run out of liberal arts majors. Okay. We're running out of meat pack. We're running out of people that know how to cut meat.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not running out of, ballet dancers. We're running out of people that know how to grow food.
Yeah.
And it's almost a tragedy that it's happening, that we've let it get to the point that we have. Because when we were going through school, get a college degree, and nobody thought about, the butcher shop that was closing on Main Street with a guy that was standing in the front that was 75 years old, that all he ever wanted was somebody to come to him and say, teach me to cut meat and I'll buy your business.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we all went to college.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of truth in that. There really is. I appreciate and I appreciate the experience that I had in college, and yet I'm sitting here thinking, that was the world different? I don't know. Yeah, sure, I guess. We're just in a spot now where we're going to have a bit of a different conversation with our kids moving forward.
Definitely a societal correction we've got to do here. So moving forward, I guess, what do things look like for this year for Cornerstone cattle?
Cornerhouse
cattle. Whoops.
No, you're totally fine. Cornerhouse cattle. So
let's back up.
Okay.
Tell me what Cornerhouse cattle is first.
Okay.
Because we haven't even got into that. I mean, we've been here like an hour and a half. We don't know anything about your beef business.
So Cornerhouse Cattle was started with me and 5 other guys that I played baseball with in college. And the name Cornerhouse Cattle comes from we all lived in a house on the corner. To the baseball team, anybody that we hung out with in college, it was referred to the corner house.
Right, we're going to Corner House to party.
We're going to Corner House, yes.
Okay.
So Corner House Cattle made sense to us. It makes sense to nobody else, and we don't care. It's just
perfectly fine. It's a good name.
Yeah. Well, we thought so. The amount of people that are like, yeah, I don't get it. I didn't ask. This is what we wanted. And so,
I just tell them everything's got to have a name.
Everything's got to have a name.
Pick this one out of a hat.
Exactly. 3 of those guys, they live out of state. And so, they don't have obviously as much hands-on, as I do. Obviously the cows are run on our property. I take care of them, on a regular basis. And a couple of the guys, there's a guy who lives in Garden City and a guy who lives, in Bueller. And so anytime we're working calves or anything like that, they'll come and help. But, so yeah, it was, and that was started, like I said, a little while ago, at the end of a hunting trip that we were all on. I had told them I wanted to do this and I was going to figure out a way, and they're like, "Hey, we want in on it." And it's taken a long time, to try and figure out exactly what that looks like, and how that's going to look like in the future, as we continue to grow, and just figuring out, what does grow look like? What does that mean for us? I don't know. We all have different perspectives, but it's been fun to try and figure all that out and what we want, the future to look like. So yeah, that's Corner House Cattle, me and 5 other guys that are all across America that, decided we were going to do this, and yeah.
So how are those cattle marketed?
Yeah. So everything is, marketed direct to consumer. We have 22 pairs right now, and so we're not a huge operation by any means. And then we have, and we don't. I would assume a lot of people have feelings about this, but it's what we do, and I like what we do. If a cow does not calve, we don't sell that cow.
I'm not judging. I'm not sitting across the table judging you harshly right now. I am not not at all.
Yeah. Depending on,
I kept a bunch of open cows last year too.
Yeah. Depending on what that cow did previously, and what's currently going on. Did she slip a calf? What happened? Will depend on whether or not we keep her for a mama cow that following year, or we move her into and fatten her up, and move her into a butcher spot. I know that there's a lot of people that don't like older cows or mama cows. I think that there's a lot of opinion on that, and I would say I got a bunch of clients that really dig it over steers, and I don't know that they really know the difference, but they think they do.
I think old mama cows make better cheeseburgers.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a company, Carter Cattle, I think their name is. I'll send them to you, on social media, and I think they're in northern Colorado, where like all of their cows they butcher are old mama cows. There was, do you remember, do you know a guy by the name of Darby Simpson? He used to have a,
I don't think so.
Grass-Fed Life podcast. It stopped years ago, but he had a guy on. It was the first time I ever heard it, and I went and did some reading on it. He had a guy that would go to the sale barn and buy up old mama cows and feed them out for a year, that was his entire model of business. And he couldn't keep the beef in stock because it tastes so good. And he marketed it. Everybody knew what it was that they were eating, type of deal. It's interesting. And we've had good success with it. So I think, we've been blessed to have these cows. I think for us, direct to consumer, and, you and I had this conversation earlier, defining finished for us is going to be different than a feedlot. I don't want if I got a 1,200 pound cow, for me, that's too big.
Right.
I don't want that. So anything over that 1,200 mark, I'm really going back and looking like, okay, what has this cow eaten?
Yeah. How much extra did I feed her? So let's revisit that finished conversation we had earlier.
Okay.
And when we were talking about that, just for clarity for the audience, we were out in the pasture and we were, going through looking at, different animals, different, some of my yearling steer, my 4-year-old longhorn, 2-year-old steer that I kept, and some of my other cows. And the question has come up and about carcass size. Mm-hmm. And the question always comes up when people really, it comes up often when people start asking about my cattle. Like, how are you dealing with the small carcass size? It's a small carcass size. That's how I'm dealing with it. Yeah. I mean, there's less pounds on it. I don't know what we need to say here.
Right.
But, and that being said, so when I'm not taking these, steers at 20 months old and throwing them in the feed yard on full feed for 4 months, what I'm not doing is I'm not putting a lot of extra fat on. I'm not stressing out, that animal's digestive system or, its biological system stays on the pasture. Is my meat going to be less marbled? Am I going to have less back fat? Yes.
Yeah.
For a couple generations until I find the right bull that's going to make me a good cow and a good steer.
Right.
But up until that point, the steer is just not my product.
Yeah.
I mean, the steer is something to go to try to maximize the value out of and get rid of it as quick as possible because the heifers are what I want.
Yeah.
And I want those heifers to turn into good cows.
Yeah.
And if we keep selecting for our good cows, right, the ones that survive on nothing, that eat sticks, rocks, and dirt, and drink air, and that stay fat all year and, shiny and slick.
Yeah.
There's a couple of those out there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna BS anybody and say I got a whole herd of them. I got a couple, 10%. Okay. Yeah. But that's enough to work with. And we keep selecting those animals that can get fat and stay fat on the forage that grows in the pasture. When they can stay fat on that all year, that's the genetic you're looking for.
It is.
I mean, fertility drives the bus. You can feed fertility and condition on anything. And, you'll find out real quick with high input costs this year. If guys have to pull back inputs, they'll see which cows they had to feed.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of guys out here that are putting an extra $200 a cow a year in every cow in their herd to get 10% of them bred.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just so much money. It's so much money.
I don't get it.
Yeah. I don't either. I
can't afford to have a breed up of less than 95%.
Yeah.
And, they're putting $500 a cow and inputs into them. And, you put $200 less inputs. What's your fertility going to, what's that going to drop your fertility? Yeah. You quit caking them. You cake them half as much in the winter, give them half as much protein in the winter. How's that going to affect your fertility? You cut back $200 a cost, and that might only cost you 5, maybe 10% fertility.
Yeah.
Well, that's the 5-10% that ain't making it.
Right.
That you're just feeding condition and fertility into them.
Yeah.
And not every animal is going to need that. And to find them, we've got to pull the inputs away, and we've got to endure some hardship, and it's difficult to go out and look at your animals and go, well, those 12 just got to go find a new job because they just can't get enough to eat. And that's the decision we all got to make.
Yeah.
Fertility drives the bus. And then you got to be looking at things like inherent body condition, hair coat, go down the Steve Campbell checklist.
Yeah. And, we are not in a perfect spot with any of that. I wouldn't say that we are, but man, you can see the years and how things have changed and how things are molding into what it is that we want. I think I get a lot of guff because I run mid-sized black Angus cows, and they're like, those cows should be so much bigger. I'm like, nah, man, they're perfect. I like the way they look. They mother phenomenally. It's exactly what we want. Everyone is interested in a finished cow. The brisket looks full, and you can't see the tail head, and all these things. And it's like, a finished cow is not 1,400 pounds for me. It's just not.
No.
I think today, I can sit here and safely say I have a laundry list of customers that would tell you they're very happy with the beef that we're producing. And we are becoming more uniformed in our look, and we are becoming, and I'm happy with that. I'm happy with where we're at. There's a lot of things I'd like to see happen. But this is not, chickens you turn in 9 weeks,
right?
In 9 years, where these cows will be in 9 years it's a life. But that's what we're looking long term here.
A cattleman really gets two good generations out of his cows.
Yeah.
And that's almost really weird. Like,
yeah,
you can do this for 15 years and only get 2 generations of cows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy to think about.
And you can turn pigs, twice a year?
You can turn pigs twice a year, yeah. Yeah, twice a year. Yeah. I think even everything we do, and I am a guy that has the ability to get the horse before the cart a little bit, or the cart before the horse a little bit, in that, like, even my pastures, I want to leave them better than I find them, but that is a journey. That is a lifetime. That is not a 12-month change. Are there changes that happen in 12 months? Of course. Can you see those? I can.
And are there 12-month periods where things might look like they're going backwards?
100%. And are they on the same pasture? Yes, because they're on mine right now. I know these differences. And I know these differences because I'm out there every single day, and I know what it is. My family knows what it is that we're trying to accomplish. But if I took some guy off the corner and say, "Hey, come look at this pasture. Tell me. I mean, it looks good, right?" Like, we are making improvements.
It's like when you're looking at my cows and talking about my cows today.
Yeah.
Okay. It's one thing to get your perspective. It's something else to get a perspective from, let's just say, random neighbor down the road who takes all his stuff to the sale barn and feeds, a couple pounds per head per day of cake every day.
Yeah.
His opinion on my cows is going to be a lot less weighted than yours.
Yeah. That is so true. And, you get that from the feedback that I have a lot of respect for, a bunch of commercial ranchers that I've known for a really long time. I love them to death, and I think they're doing the best that they got with what they got. But they kind of put the screws to me when they come out and look at the cows. They don't understand the grass finish deal. They don't understand the entirety of the regenerate. Now, you talk to farmers about cover crops, and that conversation is turning to be a pretty acceptable conversation with most people. But in regards to, you mean you're not just chalking them full of cake and, full of all that. No.
Well, where are your feed bunks at?
Yeah. No, I ain't got them.
I don't
have any. I don't need them. I don't need them. And I'm happy to say that today. You go, people get enamored by the things, and working chutes and perfect corrals and great feed bunks and big implements. And
you talking about my chute?
Yeah. I think
it's awful hard to run a ranch. So you're running a couple hundred head a year across and not have one.
100%.
It's been difficult borrowing one the last few years when I needed it for a customer. Needing one for my own.
Well, and listen, everybody is different in their stage of growth. For us, I am today proud that I don't have these massive bills in implements and fuel and things along those lines.
I'm not proud of that big green John Deere tractor sitting in my yard because I don't have one, and it doesn't have a giant bill.
Yeah, exactly. And yet there's going to come a day here where we'll have to invest in some infrastructure, and I get that. I'm good with that, and I'm not above spending money. I'm not interested in spending money that I don't have because my ego needs to be stroked. That's personal for me.
I'll get my corrals repainted when I get my water systems built out the way I wanted.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because water is better than pretty paint.
The fancy corrals aren't going to do me any good if I can't water enough, if I can't pump enough water to graze cows.
Right. Yeah.
And water's my number one issue.
Yeah.
If I could double my pumping rate, I could almost double my stocking rate.
Yeah. That's yeah.
Well, maybe not double the stocking rate. I could definitely push it higher if I had more water. I'm watered out in a lot of places right now. I'm just watered out with the amount that I can, pump, move, and store in a day on solar power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll get there one day.
Yeah. 100%.
I hope.
100%.
Oh, you want to keep going for a while?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
You're probably sold out on meat, aren't you?
I am technically, we have some ground beef to sell. But in regards to quarters, halves, and wholes, we've got, like I said, butcher spots have been our biggest issue. And so we've got butcher spots next fall. But that's the soonest we have right now, which is unfortunate because we've got a lot of beef that we can move.
Is that fall of 22 or 20?
Fall of 22, yeah. And about half of those are already bought up, which is good problem to have. But yeah, we have ground beef for sale, but no quarters, halves, and wholes.
And how are you sold on your hogs and your chicken? Is it pretty far out or?
Yeah. So the chickens we won't start marketing until they hit the ground. And the biggest reason is those are not hard to market and everyone looks for chicken. We just don't have an issue keeping, we have an issue keeping chickens in the freezer long enough for new customers. So once we start marketing those, then we just don't have an issue selling them. The pigs, we started marketing those on, I guess we didn't clarify, on 4F's Ranch.
We haven't even talked about 4F's Ranch at all.
Sorry. But we started marketing those last week a little bit, and we'll market those a little bit harder and a little bit more over the course of the next couple of weeks. But we don't have a website. In some ways, that's
extra work if you're already sold out.
It's a lot of extra work. And I'm not really good on websites and stuff like that. I have a hard enough time posting a bunch of stuff on Instagram and even TikTok. I mean, I was on TikTok there for hot and heavy for a little while, and I watch it a lot, but it turned into something that it's not the reason I started it. And so I kind of backed off a little bit, and we'll get that up and running again this spring when I start doing a couple other things. But yeah, 4F's Ranch on Instagram is really where we market the poultry and the pork, and then Cornhouse Cattle is where we market the beef. And 4F's Ranch is just that's my family. The cows are on 4F's Ranch land.
So does Cornhouse Cattle lease the land or pay day rate to 4F's Ranch?
No.
You know where I'm going. You know where I was going with that, right?
Yeah, I do.
It's fine. I'm just honest question.
Yeah, no. It's been a conversation, and part of that is how the business is structured. It's something that we'll end up revisiting at some point in time, but as of now, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
22 head is probably not that huge of a
yeah deal. I mean, we don't have a huge herd. 22 or 22 pairs. I think we're just under 60 total head of cows, so it's not huge by any means. Yeah.
And I guess another part of this that I want to unpack is it's not huge, but it does provide a pretty good living for you and your family.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this is raising animals I've probably said it 1,000 times already. This is a passion of mine. I love what I do for a living as a pastor. And I'm never not going to do that as long as I have a say in that. But I'm never not going to raise animals either. I'm never not going to, I want to take care of what we have. And I love the idea of animal husbandry. I love the idea of raising something, that has the ability to live its life as best as it can, and then it providing something for my family or for someone else's table. That's a big deal. And so grass finished beef, you do pay a premium price for it. But everybody that I've never had any issue with it. And I think it allows me to have conversations with people. So one of the reasons we really started the grass finished business, instead of going, just kind of mainstream, grain finished, is in 2018, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We hadn't, like I said, I've had cows. I was never necessarily intentional. We just haven't ever fed grain. And part of it was I didn't have the facilities to do it. I didn't have the feed bunks and things like that.
Right. Didn't have a tractor to haul the mixture out, right?
Yeah. So it was just kind of, this is how it was, and this is what we were doing without a lot of intention. In 2018, it just changed for me. We had our fourth son, Hoxton, and he had some health issues, and I got sick while he was in the NICU. And I had been sick a couple of different times, just kind of back to back. And my wife was having to go back and forth to the NICU by herself because they thought I had the flu. They wouldn't let me in for obvious reasons. And my wife, and I completely understand, you got to get your butt to the doctor type of deal. And so anyhow, went to the doctor, and they thought that I had like ulcerative colitis or something along those lines, and had the colonoscopy and did the thing, and said, sure enough, you have stage 3 colon cancer. We're going to need to go ahead and do surgery.
Shit.
Yeah. And you're going to have to go through 6 to 8 months of chemo. And so that was I was diagnosed May 25th of 2018, surgery June 4th, and chemo the end of July to December. And so for me, though it doesn't necessarily look like it all the time, what I put in my body is a big deal. And what we put in our boys' bodies.
You sure put that burrito in your body really fast at
Well,
lunch.
hey, listen, you know. Yeah. It's always been, since then, you pay attention and you're a little bit more mindful of what it is that you're putting in your body. And you get in the conversation of, there was just an article that came out on the phytonutrients in grass-finished beef. It's phenomenal, and you can get into the omega-3s versus omega-6s and all the stuff that everyone likes to fight about. But it's a big deal. The reason I bring that up is it allows me to have conversations with our customers. I'm not interested in just say, hey, here's your 10 pounds of ground beef. No, I want you to know where that came from, and I want you to know why I do what we do, and why we, whether that is the health of what I think has been proven, the health of grass finished beef, or the regenerative side of how they were, and the husbandry of how they were taken care of. That's a big deal to people. It's a big deal to me, and it's a big deal that I explain that to folks.
Have you noticed any changes on how your body reacts to food after the surgery and chemo?
100%.
So let's talk about it for a second. Like, so I won't lead you around. Just go ahead and talk about it.
Processed foods are unhealthy. And I know that is such a duh statement. And yet,
okay. So I agree with you. So what are you calling processed food?
Anything that isn't, out of the ground, or
with more than 5 things on the label, more than 5 ingredients on the label. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. And I realize that's difficult for a lot of people. And I realize it may not may not be economical necessarily. However, the bag of seeds that we were just talking about a little while ago for your garden is way cheaper than your $2.50 hamburger at McDonald's. Even
you could probably go buy 2 bags of seeds for what you pay for that cheeseburger.
And it comes down to, well, I don't have time for that. And the reality of it is we have time for the things that we want, and your health is something that needs to be a want in your life. Now I can't force that on anybody. I'm not interested in forcing that on anybody, but for me, based off of how I lived, and there are things, it's not like I eat a perfect diet by any means. That's pretty obvious if you see me, but, the beef, pork, chicken, healthy starch. And listen, this is for me.
Right.
We can get in, and people are now saying you shouldn't eat broccoli.
It doesn't matter what you say, what I say. There's going to be somebody that will argue with it and tell us that diet will kill you.
Yeah. People are interested in the carnivore diet. People are interested in, and there's probably benefits and stuff. Like, I don't know. This is what's best for me. This is what my family needs, and this is how we operate. And that's not the best for everybody. But the reality of it is processed foods, ultra processed foods are hard on my body today. And they are because they're just not good for you.
Like, if I eat a bowl of breakfast cereal,
I can't do it.
I mean, like the worst of the worst, Reese's Puffs.
Yeah.
Even if I'm drinking grass-fed milk in it, I know the next day all my joints are going to ache. I'm going to have less energy, and I'm just not going to generally feel as good.
Yeah. Bread is a really big deal. Like, I love bread. I love bread so much.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. But if it's hard on me. It's just really hard. I've noticed even like you go by the Jimmy Dean breakfast stuff, that'll mess with you.
Yep.
And why do I need that when I've got my own pork and my own sausage and my own eggs? It is a lot of the stuff that we do, or that when we started, was just for the benefit of my own family. And realizing that this is not where it was going to stop, but we had to start. So I knew what it was that we were doing. But yeah, man, it's difficult. I would assume some people will have a negative thought behind this, but there are some things that I'll continue to consume because I like them. I like the taste of beer, so I'll drink a beer. I'll cut out the 3 pieces or 2 pieces of bread to drink a beer. Like, I'm not so hard and fast on certain things that, it's not that I've never eaten fast food. We just ate a massive burrito with lots of cheese and rice and all the stuff on it. It's not that I won't.
It wasn't Taco Bell though.
It was not Taco Bell. And the burrito was really good. But it does. I mean, I would say, I don't know if you're into fasting or anything like that, but
kind of. I regulate when I take in things into my body, so I kind of do an intermittent fast.
Yeah.
So in the mornings, the way I start my day is I start my day with beef organ pills.
Okay, yeah.
Which is like liver and heart,
Spleen
liver, lungs, spleen, all the wonderful stuff that you would absolutely not want to taste. But when they put it in the freeze dryer, dehydrate it, and grind it up and put it in a little capsule, I can choke that down.
Yep.
Especially if I choke it down with some honey.
Yep.
So raw local honey, and I choke down some beef organ pills, coffee with real heavy cream in it.
Yeah.
And that usually carries me till mid-afternoon. Like today was an exception. We had lunch today, which is something I normally don't do. I normally just wait till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And then 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I can just eat whatever I want.
Yeah.
I mean, not whatever I want,
Right.
as long as I moderate the heavily processed refined foods, I can tolerate a little bit of it.
Right.
But if it's more than about 20% of my diet, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. And I'm not going to sit here and blow sunshine up your butt and say that, like I eat good, because I don't. Like I have probably the 3rd worst eating habits of anybody that I know, but I'm getting better, and I'm trying to be intentional. Like, and I think that's the key is, you know, we talked about being intentional when you're going out to the pasture. And that's, to me, that's stockmanship, is being purposeful and intentional when I go out to feed the cows.
Yeah.
Like, I know why I'm there. My body knows why I'm there. The cows know why I'm there.
Right.
And the difference, like when we went out before we fed, when we were just out in the gator, the intention was, we're just going to go out and look.
Yeah.
We're just going to go observe them and see how they are moving through the pasture today. And it's 100% intention. And that carries over to eating.
Yeah.
Like, I have this beautiful plate of food in front of me. What am I doing with it? Yeah. Well, I'm going to sit here and enjoy the company of a friend, and I'm going to eat this meal, and this meal is going to nourish my body.
Yeah.
And you don't ever feel that connection when you're at the McDonald's drive-thru. But when you're sitting at home and you've got a piece of meat on your plate that you grew,
yeah,
you know, with passion and love for, you know, however many months that it was, whether it was a chicken, hog, or beef, or lamb or sheep, if you're into that kind of thing, no judgment here, and vegetables that you grew in your garden on that plate.
Yeah.
It might not look like a huge feast. It might not have been the prettiest potato or the prettiest tomato, but you grew that food in your garden with intention over months. You put your passion and your love into it, contact with the soil, and you pick it from the ground with the intention that you're going to eat it to nourish your body.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean to sound hokey, but that's magic.
Yes. You just won at life. Like that's you're doing good. Like good for you. And I think the psychology behind that even is healthy for you, and the food that nourishes your body, that's health. Like the entire from beginning to end of the tomato that you planted and are now eating, like what that does for you as a human, that's a big deal. Now listen, that's an observation. I'm not saying there's a bunch of science behind that, but prove me wrong.
Yeah. Prove that wrong. Show me that there isn't a connection there between, you know, the intention and having a more positive result versus if you just undertook that activity with no intention at all.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the big difference. You know, we need to be thinking about being intentional. And I don't think that the farmer, when he loads up that big, nice sprayer full of poison and goes out and drives across the field at 20 miles an hour, covering 100 foot at a whack, I don't think he's being very intentional about what he's doing to his soil, to his microbes. I just don't think that maybe he's asked the honest question, why do I need to do this? And is this good for me? And is this good for the planet? And what is this going to do for the soil for my children?
Yeah. Yeah. Asking the question, why? Why am I doing this? That's a good place to start.
And I think it's not just asking once. It's not just asking one question. It's being willing to keep asking questions. Sometimes you got to get 7 or 8 layers deep on the why to really peel back all the layers to get to the root cause. And sometimes when you get down to one of these complex issues, 7 layers deep, it's just a very, very simple change. It's a very simple adjustment in intention or adjustment in thought process that can change the whole outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. All the more reason to not get your ego involved. I think there's a lack of learning when pride gets involved, and this is a journey, man. Not to get too pseudo spiritual or anything like that, but this is what it is that we're on is a journey, and that journey changes from day to day. That journey changes from year to year. And if we ever find ourselves in a spot where we're like, yeah, I got this down, I know exactly what I'm doing. Those are the exact moments where they're going to change on you.
Yep. Either go find something else to do and another skill to master, or get ready because you're about ready to get another education in what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, my friend Ellen Moeller, who she runs a greenhouse, sells vegetables just a few miles south of here, a little town called Sawyer. She had a really great quote a couple of years ago at Soil Health, and I'm always going to give this one to her. Soil health is a journey. You start where you are.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And, we need to do a better job. Me,
Yeah.
need to do a better job of meeting people where they are, no matter what side of the production or regenerative fence you're on.
Yeah.
We need to be doing a better job of meeting people where they are, without judgment, without malice, and just try to have some of these honest conversations about intention, about, why do we do these things? Yeah. Why are these things accepted practices? And what does our customer want? I mean, we got to listen to our customer. I mean, you talk to yours. You know that for a fact. And if your customers are giving you feedback, you listen to that. Just like with this podcast, the people that, that listen to this on a Monday, they're emailing me by Wednesday. Those are the people I'm listening to. The people that donate through Patreon, those are the people I'm listening to. Those are my customers. Yeah. If you want to see something, you got to go talk to the person that's producing that content or that product and get them to produce that content or that product for you.
Yeah.
And as producers of content and of products, we have to be able to tell our story.
Yeah.
And, that's a lot of what we're trying to do here on this podcast. And, a lot of what, I've seen you and everybody else do on social media that's in this direct consumer. We're not just selling you meat.
Yeah.
We're selling you our story. We're selling you a piece of us. We're selling you a piece of our operation that we have put our passion into over the years, and we're going to put our name behind it. And we're going to be proud that that is nourishing your body.
Yeah, man. And it is such a, it brings a smile to my face when someone has I said something about pride. I really try not to be prideful about it, but to know that like what your hard work made a family happy at a dinner table, man, that's a big deal to me. Like I don't take that lightly. Like I believe in what it is that I'm doing. I believe what in the animals that I'm raising, and I believe in how I'm doing it. And to know that like someone else gets that too after they've tasted that beef or they've tasted that pork or they've tasted that chicken. Yeah, man, that does that. I'm happy about that. That's a big deal.
I was just sitting here thinking, big meals, big celebrations have always been, in history, there've been a time to get, family together and, you share a meal. And I think like Thanksgiving, every family member would bring something, right? Crazy Aunt Mabel would bring the green bean casserole, and you knew that, Uncle Jerry was going to bring the ham, and you knew that, whatever.
Yeah.
You knew people were going to bring things that, they had made in their homes, and they were going to bring them to your home. Well, let's dial that back. What did that look like 100 years ago out here?
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe 75.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of people out here 100 years ago. So like 75, the early 1900s. What did that look like out here in Kansas farm country? Well, it probably looked pretty similar, but, what does it look like now? Well, it looks like now that, one guy will go to Walmart to buy the turkey, and then somebody will go to Walmart to buy the rolls, and somebody will go to Dillon's to buy the cake, and somebody will go here and maybe buy the stuff to make all the green bean casserole.
Yeah.
When 100 years ago, that was all out of our gardens.
Right.
That was all out of our pastures. That was, and it was a different intention. And that's what I'm getting at. It was a totally different intention when a community would gather for a feast or a festival, and everybody from the community would bring in food from their home with the intention of sharing it with the community so everybody could be happy.
Yeah.
Going to Walmart and buying a crap for your potluck, it's not the same.
Yeah. Just hadn't.
I'm going to name drop a few names here. Like last week's guest, Dr. Davis. It was back in March that we did this. We were invited to go to tour his office in Wichita with some other friends. Gail Fuller was there. Mm-hmm. Daniel and Robin King from Jayco Farm.
Yeah.
Future guest on the Ranch and Reboot podcast. They were there. And a couple other friends. I won't mention their names out of respect. And the meal we shared, like everything was regenerative.
Yeah.
And everything was like cooked in a kitchen with intention. Gail brought this cornbread that was, not Bloody Butcher. What's the other one? Jimmy Red.
Mm-hmm.
He brought some Jimmy Red cornbread that Macaulay Kincaid grew over in Missouri.
Oh, wow.
That Gail had grant that they went through the mobile mill that Great Plains Regeneration has.
Yeah.
They went through the mobile mill, and Gail ended up with a bag of this Jimmy Red corn flour, and he made some cornbread with it.
Yeah.
Man, you want to talk about good cornbread?
Oh, yeah.
He also had a loaf of bread made with Heritage Turkey Red, organic Heritage Turkey Red.
No kidding.
Oh man, you want to talk about good bread?
Yeah.
And then Jaco brought butter.
Oh yeah.
You know, so you get like raw grass,
Yeah.
full fat butter, and you're putting it on this awesome, home baked, heirloom organic turkey red bread, and and then there's a couple different soups there and a nice salad. It was a wonderful meal, and I didn't have that big of a plate.
Yeah.
And I didn't need a big plate.
Right.
Because it's like half the food. Yeah, half the food shut my body down. My body was like, I am done. I know there's still room in my stomach. Yeah. But my body's saying, hey guy, you don't need any more. I got everything I need down here. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm good.
Yeah. And
having a meal like that of just good, excellent, clean food with good friends and that was the whole reason we wanted to be there, was just to share a meal with friends. And it was great fellowship. So my friends that are listening to this, that were there that evening, thank you. And I hope we can do it again. And I encourage everybody, to try to replicate that experience.
Oh, yeah.
And even if you can't do it with, with Jimmy Red cornbread or turkey red, heirloom organic freaking wheat, do the best you can.
Well, there's enough places, again, it may be relative. If you are in our area, you have the ability to find produce that is from a farm.
Yep.
You have the ability to find protein that is from a ranch. Like
that Shop Kansas Farms group on Facebook.
It's perfect, man. It's so great. And listen, if you got a Jaco, I can't wait till you have those guys on there on the podcast. Those guys are phenomenal, and they are even when you guys had Lloyd Bontrager on. There are some local honey holes that not a lot of people know about yet. Well, I take that back. A lot of people know about them. So many more people need to know about them.
Right. And not just more people need to know about them. I think there could stand to probably be five more farms like Jaco or Borntrager just in Reno County.
Yep.
And nobody would, and the people that are already there doing the sales, they wouldn't even notice it.
Yep.
I mean, I think the market is that big, and that can be scaled and applied to any metro area.
Yep.
I think no matter where you go now, if a guy sets up shop and you've got meat, milk, and eggs and a little bit of produce, it won't be very long before you'll have a line of customers out your door.
Yep. I agree. 100%.
All right. You ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, man.
All right. Anything else I forgot? What'd I forget to ask you?
Oh, I don't know. I could probably sit here and talk for hours.
You got a ball game to go to.
Yeah, I got a ball game to go to. I just appreciate you having me down, and I appreciate you doing this, spending the day with me. It has been a blast and an honor.
Well, thanks for coming down, man. It's been a lot of fun meeting you and hanging out, and always appreciate hearing what other people have to say when they're on the ranch or when they're looking at my cows. Sometimes I struggle to feel like I'm getting honest feedback.
Yeah. Well, you live in a very beautiful place, and the cows look exactly like I thought they would. And that is very healthy and very happy.
Thank you, sir. And I think we'll end on that.
Perfect.
So gang, y'all have a great week.
Thanks.